It's the Cold Beer Surf Club.
Heck yeah, Chris. Well,
Yeah.
Thanks for coming down.
Yeah, super
Stoked to do
here.
this. We've gotten to hang a bunch. I feel like I've probably gotten to talk to you and just gotten knowledge and surf history and all the rad shit that you've shared with me over the years. So hopefully maybe we can share a little bit of that with someone who is interested.
Oh, heck yeah.
They better be.
I mean, shoot, we always hang out surfing and fishing at home. And it's the idea of like doing a quick drive down here, super fun. And I mean, you know, when we're out on the boat waiting for tide to change or whatever, there's a lot of people when you start waxing about the old days and that kind of stuff, they kind of like really don't care. It's actually kind of annoying, you know? And so like, you've always been like, can tell you want to hear a good one, you know?
Oh yeah, it's my favorite thing ever.
And you don't mind that, like, we never let the truth get in front of a good story too. Yeah. So
yeah, I'd be so pumped always when I ran into you on the beach and no one around, nothing to do. I'd be like, yes. Like hours would blow by and a couple beers deep and still getting more stories. So
yeah, that's kind of what I think our zone is. Like, it really is like kind of like you go down and then you know you're gonna know everybody, and like, I don't know, people you grew up with, you know, their parents, like you know, you feel pretty comfortable. It's like there's not gonna be it's just you guys, you know. So totally. I think in our zone, it's surfers, like, you know, you have a lot of 3, 4, 5 decade friendships, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking about it the other day, like, this is kind of crazy. Like, I've known guys for 40 years, spent a lot of my really special sessions together. Known them. I know they have kids. Don't know their names. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
I know them better than some of my first cousins. You know, because you're there every day for that same thing. You know, and so it's kind of interesting. I think all of us as surfers have that, where people are like, "Oh, no way, that's my buddy," and they're like, "Oh, what's his name?" And you're like, "I don't know. He's just my buddy. He was there yesterday. He's there today." And I know he'll be there for tomorrow.
For sure.
Right?
And just sort of, I mean, you
for
connect.
Better or worse. For better or worse.
Connecting through surfing, which you probably don't even know anything about each other outside of the water maybe, but just the fact that you've shared a couple of special sessions or something, there's like a bond that's created.
There is. Yeah. There is. And it's also like, you know, it's almost like a family, you know, to even go there, like you've got like your bitchy relative. You're like, oh, him. You just kind of know what's happening, how he moves and his way of being. And then, you know, and then you're like, oh, there's my favorite aunt. You know, go hang out with her. And, you know, it's like a big, weird family.
So I know you've done a couple of these podcasts. So I was trying to figure out like what I wanted to talk about with you. And I think, I mean, to me, when I was growing up, I mean, I can remember watching Thicker Than Water. Mm-hmm. The first movie probably surf movie I ever watched was like Endless Summer.
Sure.
I was like, okay, Endless Summer. Wow, this is sick, you know. And then Pat and Wingnut, and Cloud Break, and everywhere. And then like the next film I remember really connecting with was like Thicker Than Water, Shelter, and September Sessions were kind of like somewhere around the same time for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even, you know, like today there's so many hi-fi shredding movies, but when I watch those films, like there's amazing surfing in them, but I got this feeling of like, whoa, like there's something happening in those films, and there's this culture around surfing and this group of people and this like creative energy and just all this stuff. It was like kind of that like intangible stuff. And I was like, I gotta be a part of that. How do I get on a boat in Indo with my friends and surf all day and body surf, and just all the shit that you guys captured in those films was like super influential to me as a kid. So,
oh man, that means a lot, you know. And I think now there's been a little bit of time since we made those, so I can kind of have a better perspective on that sort of like 20-year window where it was. Yeah, I'm appreciating it more every year that goes by, because it was like 20 years of nonstop travel, never being in the same place for more than 2 months, and it wasn't plan had nothing to do with the tour, or it was like literally spinning the globe, being like, what is that? There's got to be something, you know. That it was that era. And I know how old I make myself sound, but it was a really, it was a good experience in that, like that feeling of mystery. Like you really, like for all the good waves we got, like there's tons of, I mean, we'd hang out somewhere in Ireland for like a month, you know? And so, less scoring, I think, in our generation, but like really special stuff, you know, really like stuff where you're like, there's no waves. Let's go. We're in Peru. Let's go to Chile. Why? I don't know. There's just more coastline. Let's just move. You know, a lot of that kind of stuff caused us to, it was just that space between the generation before us, like Tom and Aki and Jerry. Every generation of pro surfers had to figure out some kind of side hustle or in the past, you know, something, and that made some of the most unique characters in surfing because it's just like there's an element of like, let's say you really love basketball, and like of course you're gonna know the heroes, the legends, but like the real basketball, fans, they're gonna know all kinds of stuff in college, and you want to know more if that's what you're doing, and you just want to know more, so it's always that like. I sort of came to it that way. I always felt like I was just freaking lucky to be where I was, like with the crew that we ran with and getting to be in the lineup at that time, like being in the lineup with Jerry Lopez and Dane Kealoha, none of that was lost on me. So I was just like a sponge for it, and if I had been more focused on, maybe I should have focused on other things, but I was really just like, man, I shouldn't have this opportunity, and I got to be there. So I really, such a sponge, man. I just like soaked it up.
Yeah.
With no intention of, anything other than just, I guess, doing what we're doing right now, telling stories.
Totally. So when you made Thicker Than Water, that was the first film you ever made.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is pretty insane to think about how rad that film is. You had zero experience before that.
We did. We did. And Jack had ran a Bullocks a little bit. My cousin was editing. So we had like, I think what you should have when you set out to make your first film, like not enough information or money. Like that's how we were. Like we had no right to do that. But then if you think about the process, it's like if I can get to the Bay of Bengal with 12 rolls of 16 and Jack, and we Tamayo Perry, Josh Bradbury, Hans Hagen, just such great guys. I'm like, if we can just physically get to these places, I know like Jack would, you literally jump off the side of the boat. Is when Pelican cases like really started to happen, and we were like, it changed the game, right? You're not getting cameras into the jungle with plastic bags and, half full of beer, half full of a Bullocks, whatever kind of thing. It was like, Jack, you could push him outside the boat on a Bullocks and he'd surf it in. So like those things weren't at the time, like those weren't challenging, those weren't a challenging part of it. That was the fun of it, and so. We were just basically just going off of like Albie Falzon and the Witzigs and Severson, and like that aesthetic was, just ingrained into us. So it wasn't, I don't feel like we were, the only thing that was really fresh about that stuff was, some of the spots and I think the surfing was good. I think it was a good period of time for all the crew that wanted to go, because there was never on all those trips, there was never anything other than like, hey, we're going to go here. Do you want to come? That was it. There was no like, well, that's going to dovetail with this campaign and we're going to have this and we're going to do that. It was like, get your shit. And like, if you're at the airport, we're going, so yeah, that was like.
And how old were you in that?
I don't know. Let's see, 97. Like 97 was when I started like, seriously wanting to do film and surfing in 97, so the math on that. Yeah. And then that movie I think came out in 2000 or something. I'm terrible, just let the record say I am terrible with dates.
Yeah, I was 7. when that came out. I mean, which sounds right in my like growing up of where I was at surfing. I'm like, okay, 7. Yeah, that was like, you're so easily influenced at that point, you know, and seeing that.
Totally.
So, and that was like, what was your real inspiration to make that? Or, you know, was there like a draw towards film, something in particular, you know, or was it just like, hey, I want to tell this story about my buddies and this vision, you know, like where'd you come up with that?
I was always very interested in light and composition and kind of like storytelling, and I felt as though like I did see a little like part of surfing. I felt like it wasn't really, had kind of sort of faded. That was my favorite part of surfing, you know, and the places and the people in them, and so. Yeah, it just, I mean, I wasn't married, you know, and I was making a living surfing, and I had saved up, and it just felt doable. You know, it felt doable, and it felt like, well, we're in our 20s, and we're around people we want to be around, and like, it was that big thing of like 18 months later when we got it done, I was like, you know what, I had gotten hurt, you know, and so I was like, that was a great way to spend that 18 months. It'll be a fun little like thing, you know, like we made it, we did it, you know. And I was like almost like out of respect for the Bruce Browns and that, you know, like we were listening, you know, we were watching. It informed us, you know. It was almost kind of like that. And then of course it was fun, and people seemed like they appreciated it, so we kept doing it, and here we are.
Yeah, I think those 3 films to me. Well, I mean all your films, but those 3 that were really influential to me. I mean, those are like something that'll stand the test of time in surfing forever. And for kids out there who haven't watched those, they should fucking watch them, because that's, you know, I think I sort of, which is weird, I think maybe as you get older and you see things change and something that you love to do, right? It's like, it was interesting to hear you say that at that point you felt like what you loved about surfing was maybe falling off. So you were inspired to try to like carry on some of that tradition. Yeah. And now it feels like things just change so fast, but I would agree. Like that's, when I think about what I love of surfing, it's that, you know, and I feel like that's kind of dwindled too. Yeah,
the thing though, I think is that like there's only so many people that are really going to like live it, you know, like and like for that kind of those kind of some kinds of film and music and stuff that people like, it misses a lot of people. You know, like when we first started making, there hadn't been much slow-mo in a long time when we made our first movies, you know, and so a lot of people don't get it, and that's totally okay. I've always like kind of been like, man, I know somebody's gonna get this. Like my friends would dig this, you know, like I'd sit around and watch this. So you kind of like make it for yourself and for your crew, you know, and if they like it, then it usually, like when you're trying to make something that everybody's gonna love, it usually sucks, you know. I mean, that goes with everything. So with that group of films, it was truly like, you know, like we always went under the moonshine conspiracy, right? And somebody one day was like, "What is that?" I'm like, "I don't know. I just made it up. Like, just made it up. Doesn't mean anything. We needed something to put on the beginning of the movie, you know. Like we were just kids, like literally getting the processing, some of the film transferred and all that stuff, trading surfboards." Like Al Merrick didn't know he was making a movie at that time or funding a movie. No, it really was that, you know. It was classic. And I borrowed money from Bob Hurley and paid him back. Very proud of that. Paid him back every penny. And so yeah, that's kind of it's only been in this last year I've kind of stopped to look back, you know, because it's been 20 years or whatever. It's been a long time. So
that's pretty wild. I mean, obviously at that point there'd been people who were free surfers, you know. Sure. Now that's like a very coined term, like to be a free surfer. Sure. But at that point when I was listening to the conversation you had with Jamie, and you know, yeah, Bob Hurley believed in me. Yeah. And I was like, Chris, you're not making heats, but you're fucking rad. Yeah. Like why, let's just go this way, you know? And at that point, I mean, there couldn't have been too many guys that were in that position to be getting paid to surf and not compete and like be storytelling. And like, I mean, you were in a way like probably one of the first free surfers. Yeah.
I mean, I've always kind of like struggled with that term too. Cause like basically, I mean, I couldn't make heats. I wasn't having a bad run. I sucked at contests, and I knew it more than anybody did. I did, and yeah, and so it was like I was hanging out with Stesic a fair bit. And,
Craig,
Craig Stesic and Hornbaker and Art Brewer and Teddy Grambeau, and like they like kind of were elders for me that like understood that I wanted to know more, like I would needle them for more stuff, and so they definitely were informative for me. I mean, lots of people inspired me that I don't know, but those guys were like, having breakfast with and like talking about stuff, and Uncle Craig pushed me away, for a long time, and he's like, "You little fucker, I'm not giving that shit away for free," and he still doesn't. He still makes me earn it, but it's yeah, you either like that shit or you don't, man. I want to know the details of what Kivlin was riding at that year at that spot. Like, I care about it. I kind of wish I didn't, because I'd probably be more productive in the rest of my life. But it's like I have a few friends and we'll just totally waste an hour on like, so wait, like, free ride? I thought that board was da-da-da-da. Who shaped that board? And again, it's useless information. It's as Mark Cunningham so eloquently put via his shrink, surfing is just a beautiful diversion. So I think that's important too with surfing, to not take it too serious. I feel like the second you take it too serious, it kind of wrecks the whole thing.
For sure, yeah.
So it's that balance of like, oh man, I'm freaking out on this. This is amazing. But like, there's only a few of us that are that frothy, and then you put the films out, and then you go, and we four-walled those films all across the country. I mean, like gymnasiums, school gyms, all the way to super fancy setups in New York. Got to see it all, and it turns out more people are in like get that, that sort of way of sharing surfing. Yeah. So.
And you pretty much, we were talking to recently, just about all sorts of surfing, but I mean, it's wild to think, coming from where we come from at home. I mean, there's not a lot of big waves.
There's not a lot of big waves.
But a lot of people from our zone sort of charge.
Yeah.
And you really charged. And we were saying, you told me that you were the first person to ever paddle out at Mullaghmore. Well,
it was a kind of like because I let's see. So with Mullaghmore, like, to watch what those guys are doing right now is so incredible to me. It's so amazing. And as my fascination with Ireland and goes way back. My grandmother came over on the Lusitania, right? So, and then made her way across to Kentucky, then all the way out to the U.S. And Ireland has always been a huge thing for me. And
that was probably like a pilgrimage for you the first time.
Kind of was, yeah.
There, right?
It kind of was, and yes, it was. And there was lots of rumors floating around about that wave. I had bumped into Joel Fitzgerald in France a couple of years before, I think, and he's like, "Fucking I just fuck thing," and he had a big bang on his, like a big divot in his face, and I'm like, because people underestimate Joel Fitzgerald. That guy at one point, I think, was top 3 big wave guys in the world.
No way.
I really believe that,
sick.
and I've seen it. I saw it. Like, and he was off like doing whatever, he just was like doing his own thing. But really underestimated in big waves for that period of time. But so I talked to Joel in the parking lot, and I saw his face, and I'm like, that's what I want to go there. Like, that looks like, he's like, there's fucking slabby left, and da 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 da. So that got me thinking. I'm like, cool. I know there obviously had to be waves, but then Joel confirmed that, and then I started to talk to Rob Gilly, and Gilly had been there with Curran and seen Mullaghmore.
No way.
Massive and perfect. Like, Gilly still talks about it. But it was like Tom had like a 6'4", so there was it wasn't that he didn't pal out. He didn't have anything, you know? And so it was just like, and at that time, all we were doing was traveling for waves. So it was just like, I inked that. I'm just like, we're going to Ireland, you know? So, long story short, so that was early 90s. And the wave that Joel had surfed, Joel Fitzgerald, the wave that he had surfed, is right next to Mullaghmore. It's so funny to be talking so freely about this, saying this out loud, because for a long time, you know, like I went back 5 times to try to get it, and I just didn't have the right forecasting. I brought a ski the last time, but I put a lot of heart into trying to get it, you know. Anyway, I'm bouncing around, but so we went and surfed that wave that Joel surfed, but you can see Mullaghmore from there. It's just a big version of it. Like the wave that Joel surfs it's a smaller version, mental stand-up barrels, but it's not Mullaghmore. So I just kept seeing it. And I'm like, dude, that thing's capping. And I mean, it gets way bigger here. And so I believe the crew I was with, including Rob Gilly, thanks to Rob for that first trip, but kind of organizing it all. Those guys went home, and I'm like, man, we've been here for how long? It hasn't broke. That thing's going to do it, you know? So I stayed with Richie Fitzgerald. So he was the kind of surfing mayor of almost like, I would say like Ireland at that time, you know, like a good goofy footer. They had a little store there in Bundoran. So I stayed back with him. And his mom, Peggy, sweetest Irish woman in the world, made us shepherd's pie and spent a lot of time with their family. I was even doing runs like for their little surf shop, like driving the little van, going doing pickups down in Sligo. And like it was such a neat little period of time waiting for that thing to do it. You know, it was like looking back on it. It's such a dork. W.B. Yeats is buried right there under Ben Bulben. And I used to and this, like, because whenever he left, I was solo, right? And Richie was off working and doing his thing. So I'd be cruising around with like Guinness in the back, go sit at W.B. Yeats under Ben Bulben and just hang out and wait for the freaking spirits to come out of the hills. It was just like everything about it, man. It just felt so good. And then that day happened, and I had where it was breaking, and I had just polished like a beer and a giant like Irish bread butter. And I was just like, whoa! I was at the Ye Olde Bridge bar. I'll never forget it. And I look out the window, and I'm like, fuck, it's just different outside right now. Wind kind of started to switch a little bit. I'm like fucking burping, and I had the 710. Owl. It was a pipe board, because we used to ride these freaking giant boards at Pipe, you know, and it was a really good pipe board. And then so I had done winter in Hawaii as usual, and then I had stopped at Chopu and before Ireland and brought that board, which is stupid, you know, like I don't know. We were just trying to figure it out at that time at Chopu, like what can work, what's possible. It was before Laird did his, you know, showed us all what you could do out there. But I ended up taking that board. I came home and then took that board to Ireland because I just like, there's got to be a need for this. So I had the right board that had been ridden in the right waves for a slab. Like that's all that board really was, you know? Yeah. And I got my shit together, and like, I'm sure they have a better way now, but you pull up and, all these pastures, and then there's Lord Mountbatten's castle on the point. Like it's out of like a freaking like Middle Earth shit, man. Like you pull up these cliffs and pasture this crazy castle. So Lord Mountbatten, and by the way, and I can mess up details at any time. So, but anyway, the Irish didn't want this English royalty at that zone, and it's a proper castle, like a real castle. And the Irish blew him up. They didn't blow up the castle, but they literally bombed him. I think he was in his boat,
Gnarly.
So you pull up, and it's like Ben Bulbin is this sort of like buttress, this feature in the mountains. So proud. Snowcap. Right below him lays WB Yates. Mullaghmore's right there. Like, it's just a crazy part of geography, like the layers there. So anyway, I paddle out. The first time I paddle out was the biggest. To this day, I ever remember trying it. And I just paddled out, basically.
And you're by yourself?
100% by myself.
No one around?
Nobody around. And, but I mean, it wasn't like there was nobody around. I would have loved it. I would have loved there was a fucking helicopter. I just didn't have it. It has M10. So that first session, I just got my fucking ass kicked. Like, there's no, like, I was the first guy to surf it and do the whole thing. Like, I paddled out and witnessed it. And like was just thinking of the guys at that time that I wanted to get back there, to bring them back, because I didn't want to surf it again by myself. You know, it's got the takeoff thing, then it's got that thing. Like, I was sitting wrong. I was sitting between those things. Yeah. And I knew better. I should have either just nutted up and sat on the spot, the deep spot, and what I ended up doing is just catfishing that second section. So I got some, but you know what I mean. So then back, I took my brothers back. We had a ski with Dana Brown, and we got it like 8 feet. Still rad, but not. So when I saw the footage of the thing coming in, that wave happening, I was just like, it was so bittersweet. Same with Chopu. Like, those early days, man, like, we knew what it could do. We knew what we could do. And it was like, either like bad timing or we didn't have enough heart. Maybe we should have gone harder, you know? We could have. That's the cool part. Is like, in your heart, you're like, I know we can go harder. Like, at the time, you know, like, but I physically can't. Like, I don't know how, you know, and then 15 years later, you're like, I fucking knew it was doable. I knew you could do it, and I gave it all I had. It was like,
yeah, there's no roadmap. You're just going, whoa, look at that. Like, I'm going to try.
Totally.
You know, I don't know what time. Let's go.
Well, it reminded me of the first time I paddled out to like big pipe. I was like, okay, nothing here equals up to me making a wave and getting a barrel, like physically and everything. Like, but I only did it because I was watching humans do it. I'm like, it's possible. I mean, yeah, that is Johnny Boy Gomes, but if you can get down the face, like, I can at least try, you know?
I remember so vividly the first time I ever saw pipe firing. I went over with Hurley. I was like 13, 14 maybe.
Yeah.
And we were staying at log houses. This is a total departure from where we were, but we'll go back. But I couldn't sleep, but we'd been like on the North Shore for like a week, and it was small, and we were surfing like little logs and rockies, and then everyone was like, oh, swell's coming. It was like mid-November. And I went to bed that night, and I was sleeping on the couch at this house at Logs, and freaking it just started cracking in the middle of the night. And I was like, oh my God. And I could not sleep. I was so just nervous and just fired up. I was like, oh my God. And it was a full moon, and I was laying there. I was just like, fuck it. And I got on a bike and I rode down to Off the Wall. I didn't even know where Off the Wall was.
Sure.
I just rode down to the beach. I was like, okay, I don't know what this is. There's this place to go down to the sand. I just walked down there. It was probably 2 a.m. I was like 13, 14. I sat at Off the Wall and I watched these sets just come in, like these huge lines, just in the moonlight. And I was just sitting there going, oh my God, this is what's the North Shore is all about.
It's that feeling. You only have that feeling once.
Dude, and I sat there and I was just like, oh my God, how do people surf this shit?
Right.
And I went back to the house, and I don't even know, I can't really remember if I fell asleep or not, but finally it was like everyone was getting up, and we went down to Beach Park and we looked at pipe, and there was one guy out, and I was just watching these huge, like in hindsight, you know,
sure,
firing 10 to 12 foot pipe,
sure,
like as good as it gets pretty much. One guy out, kind of washed throughs probably, and I was just looking at these things going like, I can't surf. How does anyone make a drop on that wave?
Totally.
It was the weirdest thing.
It's a leap of faith, truly, in the best sense of the term. Like,
knowing what I know now, it looks so much gnarlier looking down the beach into it, because it just like goes inverted and crazy. Once you're straight on, you're like, oh, okay,
the hydrodynamics of Pipeline are truly like, the whole world moved, they ran for Chopu and some of the, as they should, like there's, holy shit, there's more big giant barrels out there. But I maintain that like there's the hydrodynamics at Pipeline are just like, man, there's such a thing to behold. They really are.
It's such a crazy wave.
Because of how much variance is in each wave. And that's the thing I sort of tell people. I'm like, so imagine like a spot and like you pick that everybody's got a spot they've surfed where if you pick the wrong one, you're on the rocks or you're going to break your board or whatever. Imagine it's like that, but like, and then there's like that element the wave can kill you, whatever. But the crowd, man, like you can't. It'd be like going into like battle with like blinders on. Like the most important nuancy thing of that shoulder, that little rivulet that's happening, that's a make or break thing. That 6 ounces of like chip shot thrust, that's 6 whatever. That is in that situation more than anywhere I've ever surfed. Is like it is the most high pressure moment on who's gonna go, and there's all this unsaid shit in eyes when you're looking at guys' eyes, and it's happening right now. It's happening right now, and you're looking at your best friends or your sort of nemesis in some case.
Or someone who wants to kill you.
Yeah, and everybody's out there to make or break their whole fucking deal, and so. The idea of a perfect 12-foot pipe wave coming to you is like pure joy. The idea of doing it with 40 really good surfers.
Or 100.
Or 100, yeah. It's
maybe
probably
2
100 now. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Like the idea of doing that, and then within the pipe crowd, and again, I know I'm going to date myself because it's probably shifted a little bit, but like there was such an important hierarchy, and you had to know your place in that, right? Because everything I've learned about all that I learned the hard way. Like maybe, and I won't name names, but so-and-so might have been on a bit of a bender last year and now he's back and I don't really remember him, but yet it's so-and-so's nephew that you should know or and then you end up with your friends broken at best. You know what I mean? So there was such a neat hierarchy within that though, man. There was always a contingency of dudes that were like kind of like really good surfers but hadn't surfed, didn't really know how it was happening, and they thought it was basically, like the north side of the pier or whatever. And so it's like every man for himself kind of thing. And then so you're fighting those guys, and then you get a wave that's for sure doomed, but you don't know until the guy pulls back. And there's no going back now. You know what I mean? So that's the trick at pipe.
Yeah, and I mean you're sitting there, and it's so like a fraction of a second could be you getting tossed on a 10-footer.
A fraction.
Getting really, really hurt or dying.
Yeah.
Or getting the wave of your life.
And
the best ones are usually the ones you're like, I don't know.
Almost always.
And then, it worked.
Almost always. Unless you're, and that's paddling's a huge factor. And like if you're like the magic paddlers, man, like the Kalani Robs and Reef Mac and the Irons brothers, Derek, I get so jealous of I'm a horrible paddler. Like
I'm pretty bad too.
For somebody who's like done it for 40 years, like I believe me, I get made fun of it. Always have got made fun of it. So for me, it was always that like, no matter what, it was a late drop for me. Like if I was I got really good at late drops because every drop was a late drop. You know what I mean? So you put all those factors together, and I put all those factors together, and it reminds me why I never got like the one I was waiting for at pipe. That's how I feel. I still feel like there was still one that I was, and I kind of like it that way. Kind of like I'm not good at going like, okay, boys, we did it, and let's move on. Like totally. I like having those things in my life where that like every day you think about, you move towards that goal and you chip away. It's kind of a letdown when you pull it off, whatever it is in life. You know what I mean? Like it just sort of, I like to have that thing, that little mystery about the thing. And I'd rather have something to chip away on it forever. Some things in your life you should chip away on forever, I think. Have things like that.
Yeah, I'm similar to you in that way for sure. Like I love the chase and the feeling of getting better and the feeling of like, oh, there's more out there. There's something there. And like, the improvement and the work that goes into that. I mean, and I think that's a good way to be because then you enjoy So every day you're not waiting for this, like, I achieved this. Okay. I always felt like I won a contest. I was like, that was it. Okay, cool.
Totally.
Next, you know.
Well, and I feel this. That's how I feel. Like there's a few like waypoints in my life where it was time to celebrate or something. You know, time to make a thing about it. And I always felt like, well, fuck, dude. Of course, like I had every opportunity in the world to do something I love. Like this is, if everything goes smooth, that's what happens. Like you get together with crew, you work really hard, whatever it is, and any walk of life, and then you get to the thing, you're like, cool, well, we did what we said we were gonna do. You know what I mean, kind of thing. I think if you stop to, I don't know. Keep going.
You can't smell the roses. Can't smell the roses.
That's why I never check the wave reports.
Yeah, you just go.
Ever. I never check the forecast. Like I want every day to be like a surprise that I'm probably get skunked. And then you get to every day is like, no way, there's waves. Like there's corners. Look at that little thing. I have a buck for every whiny guy in the lineup that was like good fun waves, like talking shit about the swell because it wasn't
as good
the
as
computer promised him.
Yeah. I've probably done that a few times.
And the other thing is, all my friends know that I'm a little bit behind on the technology. So if something really, really good happens, like that last swell of you guys at Rincon, I was getting like real time footage of you guys like cheering. Like, I was like cheering. Well, fucking Conor better get another one, dude. Hold it down, dude. Hold it down. This is you. Like, come on. Like, just for fun, you know.
Awesome.
So I get the good stuff.
I want to go back to Hawaii for a second though, because you guys spent a ton of time over there. And I think like Parker and I always were, we were pretty lucky to get to know you guys from, I think, a pretty young age, and looked up to you guys probably more than you ever knew. And I was always really inspired by it. Like it felt like you maybe leading Keith and Dan. I don't know. They could maybe say also otherwise, but like you guys were always sort of just blazing your own path. It felt like to us. And I always thought that was super inspirational. And, but yeah, I mean, I feel like that when we were kids, there was this thing of like, you had to go to the North Shore and you had to charge. Cause if you went there and you sucked, it was like, oh, that's stopped and next, you know, like you weren't going to make it as a pro surfer.
Totally.
And so, you know, like coming from our area, you know, maybe Brownie had spent some time there, probably like was pretty close with Uncle D, like Brownie charged and had respect on the North Shore. And then you guys, I mean, like Dane and Bobby surfed really well over there, but I never really thought they didn't put like as much time in there. But Keith and Dan like posted up. Yeah,
we posted up for sure. Like my Hawaiian family I'm very close with, and you know, the Hill family, and they took care of so many of us guys. They really, really did. Like we used to be, that's so great. We got to crash all those years and eat all those years and melt down at your house for a day. You know, like you were like it was a really, to this day, stay in close touch. And that's getting to be with the Hawaiians meant a lot to us to this day.
Yeah. And I mean, like I think that someone, you and me, and, you know, there's those of us who really appreciate the history of surfing and like the roots and kind of like the way, like I love the way that the hierarchy worked in Hawaii. You know, when I was a kid growing up, I was like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Like there's those guys, I fit in here somewhere, you know, like, okay, like I could, you know, boom, boom. And it just was like, you know, you kind of had to like respect it, and you had to respect those people. And it kind of just, everyone sort of like fell in a line. And if you didn't, it was like, hey, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's just like taking a deep breath and like realizing that like, that just shut the fuck up and do what you're told. And there's plenty for everybody, and do that for a while. And then you're going to end up with friends. You know what I mean? It's not complicated. You know what I mean? Like you're just perceptive, and you grew up at Rincon where there was an order, and you're like, okay, I get this. You know what I mean? And it's better for everybody. You know, I mean,
that's crazy. Now, I think lineups, maybe, I don't know, there's got to be somewhere where it still exists, but I mean, even at home, like even I was just on the North Shore, like it's sort of gone, the way it was, you know?
Gone back to how it was?
No, it's like that order and like sort of that hierarchy in a lineup just feels like it's like a free for all now in most places. Yeah. And I actually think, you know, it's rad. Like I'm all for, I mean, we all love surfing, like we want more people to love surfing, right? It's a great thing to do, but there's definitely something to be said about that kind of hierarchy. And I think it's safer in a lineup, you know, when you have like kids out who are like 8 and 10 and haven't surfed pipe and they're out there just like, oh yeah, I saw that one kid get an Instagram clip and blah, blah, blah. It's like, dude, like the kids are getting hurt and people going over the falls and dropping in and boom, there's no like that order of, so it's kind of gone.
Yeah. And I've noticed in the last, like, you know, like for a while now, you know, you have people come in to surfing and react, you know, and usually it's a headline, surf rage, right? Like they love it, right? They have nothing to do with surfing. Like to them, it's just another thing to sport fuck. You know, they're here for the story. Let's see how we can make people either pissed off, angry, jealous, mad, whatever. You know what I mean? And so, you know, you read all the different stuff, get everybody's opinion, everybody's experiences, right? You know? At the end of the day, a respectful lineup, you can't fuck with that. Like nobody can say, well, you know, we don't know if that's the best for everybody. No, it starts with respect. You have respect for the place you're at, the people you're with, and it's better for everybody in the long run. You know, like these people don't realize they're saying like, no, we just want to make a free for all. Like we want to make a free for all. That's what we want. And it's not about violence. It's not about beating people up. It's not about yelling. Like you and I have grown up surfing with the silverbacks that like, you know, every place has a different brand of garnering respect. But like in our zone, like the dudes that you really watched out for didn't talk. You knew, you know, like you could read a dude and be like, ooh, as a 12-year-old, I ain't fucking with that dude. I'm not sitting at the indicator anymore. I'm not sitting on the reef up, whatever. I'm like, I did that for 10 years and it was still fun.
Yeah.
You know, it was still fun. And then one day the guy's like, you're up next. Like, how incredible is it for those dudes to even talk to you?
And that feeling of sort of like working your way up, you know, being a kid, putting time in on the inside the Grombowl, where I belonged, you know, and watching sort of this thing that, okay, someday maybe I'll be out there with the boys, like getting a real wave, you know, and then the day that came was so rewarding, you know.
Totally. And the thing that like theoretically, you know, we talk like, I forget, somebody compared it to Tragedy of the Commons, and we talk about like how important surfing is to us in terms of just like, if, you know, getting to go jump in the ocean for a day means a lot to us, you know. And we all cheat, right? Because man, like it's like that thing. But if we're all in the same mindset, then it's like you can just have a lot more fun, man. And like there's no bitchy shit talking. There's none of that. You know, it's like, how fun is it when you're in a lineup of chaos and you don't want to be the dude? Like you have all the bona fides, you do, to go out and just like hold court and get every single wave, just like some of our friends have done. But you have the restraint and you're like, your example is gonna, you know, your example, oh, this is what I was getting at for it. So you growing up, how fun would it be when you don't want to be the enforcer? You could, but you don't want to. And one of the boys paddles out and just everybody sits up, like chirps or barks. Everybody sits up and it's so great because just by him telling you how many beers he had last night or some chick, people go, oh, okay. There's order out here. Yeah, I can't be a dick. I can't be a thief. I can't be a wall-eyed freaking like moron in this lineup. Like I will be held accountable. And that goes back to my other thing is like an order with respect in it and accountability. You can't fuck with either one of those things. And that's all the guys that have been born and bred in that world. It's like, that's all they're asking for. Like take your fucking surf rage, all your taglines, all your headlines, is stir in the pot. Every walk of life has assholes. I'm not gonna say any names, but I know a few guys that like they were actually paddling out to fight. Like, they didn't surf that good, so they were hung up about it, and they would, no exaggeration, fight every session. You know, this is not at home, but other spots, and there's that. That's not surfing.
Yeah, that's not.
That guy's gonna fight at Foodland. He's gonna, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and they did. So that got as a surf mentality, and then you get like Nat got mucked out bad in Australia one year. He was being Nat in the lineup, you know, and for all the thousands of beautiful waves that man has caught, you know, like his little zone, like that's the thing that the whole world knows about, you know, is Nat was being Nat, and somebody had enough of it, you know, and then it could have been done there. But the media just loves white sharks, fights, fucking 100-foot, fucking whatever. Like, that's what they go to. It's okay.
Yeah. Classic. Did you, when you were young and you started surfing Pipeline, I know we've talked about this, you know, like you're probably not going to get a good wave. It's almost worse. Like, I remember when I was young feeling like it was almost bad to get a good wave.
Right.
Because I got the good wave that someone else wanted. And you're like, fuck, oh shit, I didn't get that wave. You know, it was almost better to be the guy getting the shitty closeout, and the boys would be like, oh yeah, sick closeout, you know, like, totally. And I remember Parker and I sitting on the beach with you when we were kids, and you're like, yeah, boys, like freaking go over there and just pack some big closeouts. And we were like, all right, let's do it. And I look back now, man, I was like, the year Andy passed away, we flew over to his memorial in Kauai. We flew back to the North Shore, and there was this just mental swell at Pipe the next day, and it was like everyone was on it, like all the boys were out, and it was firing, but it was really crowded, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna go surf off the wall, because there was no one out. Sure. And I was like, I remember like, oh yeah, I remember seeing a couple of guys, I barely knew where it was. Yeah. I'm gonna go sit over there. Yeah. And like I pulled into these closeouts. Like I got a couple of pretty good waves actually too. But I packed a couple of closeouts that were so big and gnarly. I look back now and I'm like,
what were you doing? What was I thinking?
Yeah. Like, how did I survive those waves? Because now I won't do that.
Well, here's the thing: is it's a precarious way to get a spot, to get an opportunity. Right? It's very precarious. But no, you got to imagine all the other guys, even the Groms you're surfing with, like they grew up going to Sunset Elementary. And so everybody, even if they're like, all right, Grom, you're sitting in the back of the line, they know who they are, probably know their dad. The guy's our age, you know, at that time. So like, again, I don't suggest that method that we did, just go out and just get a bunch of, and what it does is it puts you on the radar, and they're like, if that little fucker gets a chance, he'll go. We know that. And at Pipe, that's kind of a big part of it. So they're like, cool, check, he'll go. And then they'll give you something like a little, I'll never forget, it meant a lot to me, and Kainoa probably wouldn't even remember it, but we're sitting, I think they like call it like the Wakita Bowl now or something. That deep sort
of like almost left off like Aints. It's almost like coming from Aints.
Yeah. That was like where I like to sit too, you know, and Wakita, what a freaking legend, dude. I have stories about him in Okinawa, me and him, just like, it's for another time, but that guy's a legend. And when I heard they're calling it the Wakita Bowl, I was so happy because he came into it, oh, Pipeline, Hawaii, like, you know, very like, this is the thing, you know? And, but anyway, I'm just happy about that. So I'm sitting in that zone-ish, you know? And Kainoa McGee sits there a lot too. He sits wherever the fuck he wants because he's going to make it. And he's all, this one came in and he was just like, he like gave it a sniff and he was like, okay, Malloy. And I'm like, oh, fuck. You know, it was one of those just like, not, I had a lot of waves like that, but this one, like, I don't know, it was makeable. And I'm just like, probably not going to be a good thing, you know? And like 20 minutes later, I saw him. We were sitting in the same spot. And he was like, fuck, did you break your board? Reef cuts? What? And I'm like, I made it. And I think I was more surprised than he was. But after that, kind of always, Malloy! Like, and then because Kainoa is treating you like a human being, then other guys are like, cool, I'm not going to kick his ass. I'll yell at him, fade him. I'm not going to kick his ass. Kainoa came with Kainoa, or he's with Kainoa. You know what I mean? And so I've had really good luck with that. And just kind of hustling, you know, like Marvin, for some reason, really liked my brothers and I. I used to mess around with those lefts at Waimea a little bit, and he had started that project. Maybe Jose Angel may have back in the day, but I know Marvin was. So that was kind of our little like, hey, Chris, how's the left? What's in the left? We go. And like, it'd be like, oh, Dad, if he says that thing at the end, then we have to, which is we go. Like, what's it gonna, you know? So that's super helpful to have, and that just doesn't come free. You know, you have to like show that you want to be a part of it. You know, that you're willing. You know the odds. You know, and so that helped us a lot, just having that respect and give us opportunities. You know, but I also didn't. I actually haven't even thought about this in a long time, but there certainly was a palpable point when it was like, how's these three Holly kids? They're freaking, they'll go, like, they're fun. They're freaking, they buy beer, whatever. They're fun. That lasted for a long time. And it was like really felt taken in by the Hawaiians, you know? And there was a point, and it would have been in like 2000, early 2000s too, where it's like, okay, we're on the North Shore. We're all hustling kind of for the same piece of pie, right? We're all serving pipe back door, the reefs when they break, sneaking to Narlu in the summer, Chopu, whatever, hustling. And I felt like there was a point where like boys were like, all right, you guys have enough. Like, you know, like, did you think part of the plan that you were going to get the best waves out here? Like, because that's not part of the plan. There was no conversation, there was no nothing, but that's kind of how I felt. So that's when I was like, man, we've been hanging around the equator a lot at that point, you know, and then people were hanging around the equator, and the whole like Chopu thing just kind of was like such a huge part of my life that just disappeared overnight, you know, when Corey got that, when Laird got his wave, and then I was somehow like, somebody came home with a sheet of slides, and they're like, check this out. And imagine like projecting Chopu for the last 4 summers, and then he got that one, and I was like, that's the one we've been waiting for this whole time, or hoping for a chance at, because it was either too big or just fun medium. It wasn't that like magic size. But it spooked me off. I kind of never kind of was like, cool, the kids, they're going to do shit I can't do out here, you know? So, you know, I just think what those kids are doing at Mullaghmore is just amazing. It's so neat to see. And like, this batch of kids, man, like Nick Von Rupp and you guys, and
I'm not in that batch of kids. I never really got into the.
But you guys charge. But I'm saying, like those guys in particular, Nick and Luca Padua. Right before them was like Cole and Ramon, but like I share like this like cool kinship. I don't even know Nick and Luca, but the other guys, I keep in touch with those guys, but they have that thing where they're like, big giant water, epic, let's go, fun rippable waves, but they're there for that slab, that thing, that left slab, and like it's just so fun to watch that progression, you know, of those spots that you project for so long, and then you're like, I'm tapping out, man. I got a kid due in like a month, like musical chairs, boys. I can't do it. That first few years not chasing it was really hard. Mm-hmm. Super messes with your head. Luckily I had a friend, his name's Stephen Kotler, who's he wrote a book called The Rise of Superman, and it really talks about that sort of relationship with big waves in terms of like dopamine, serotonin, all those, cortisol, those things that as a kid you're like, you know, you don't know why you're so driven or so amped or what keeps pulling you back. And I thought it was kind of hocus pocus stuff, you know, how he's breaking down the physicality, you know, and the neuroscience of why we keep going back and doing that thing. Yeah, and again, I was like, okay, that sounds cool, man. Like, let's just have dinner. I didn't understand it. And now, these years later, I'm like, God, you know, that totally makes sense now, you know? Like, there's always something about, like, Roger Erickson or Mark Fu, Bradshaw, Brock, Ross Clark, like, all the guys that see that and decide that's what they are going to do. I think they're a little off.
Did you feel like that?
Oh yeah.
Like what drew you into that?
What drew it into
the big wave? You know, like going left at Mavs.
Yeah.
surfing all this crazy shit and wanting to paddle out at Mullaghmore with no one around, with no one even to, like today people, it's like there's cameras everywhere. Oh yeah, it goes viral on the internet. You're just like, I'm just going to go surf that by myself. If no one would have even known if you never came back.
I think that I might get credit for like trying these big lefts, but like I'm goofy foot. So if the big wave and there's any possibility to be on my front side, it just made sense. I always say that about Mavericks. It's like, it wasn't a leap of faith for me, as I just felt like I saw that the thing was just, could go square, and I knew you couldn't get in on it. So there's just a threat through the right, I'm like, I figured that part out. And at that time there'd be 5 guys out, and so just goofy foot. And I just felt that goes back to the pipeline thing of like the crowd and how big a factor it is on the big ones, on real ones. And there was just nobody going left. So that's kind of, and then Mullaghmore and those waves are just, and it does have something to do with growing up where we grew up. You and I grew up is the land of rights, So I got good at pig dogging, but then it wasn't till it got equatorial that I was able to that's where kind of everything, G-Land and macaronis, chopu, a lot of good lefts out there. So, I haven't been surfing lately. I go outside with a cold hose on the ranch and just sit under a freezing cold as the sun comes up.
No way, really?
Yeah, I've just been body surfing, pushing kids into waves and cold hosing it.
You gotta go surf.
Let's go. But see, the thing is, I don't want to go surfing with you because I want to go fishing with you. So,
we did that. Now we gotta go surf.
Because I'll never forget one time you're so cool and humble, and you were like, "Hey man, would you take me fishing?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." I'm like, "Great, like that'll be fun." We had some beers and stuff. Within like 20 minutes, I'm like, "You could outfish me all day," and you're like, "No, I can't." and so fast forward. Last summer was such a, obviously to get to go for Coop, especially to get to go fishing with you. And then you put us on so much, it was just so much fun fishing and such good harvest. And Cooper's just talked about Conor every day. And what would Conor think? Dad, we're going to go bass fishing. Can we take Conor? It's just you're part of his fishing lore forever. Those fish that we were getting on the deck were literally bigger than him.
Yeah, that one halibut you guys caught was bigger than Coop. It was insane. That was so fun.
Easy.
It's so cool sharing something that you love with, a kid, and just seeing how fired up he was. And also, I was so impressed on how fast he learned. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. I've taken some people fishing a few times, and they're still and Coop was like, "Conor, I think that rod's hitting the bottom a little bit." And I'm all, yeah, go wind it up. He's so on it. Yeah, it was insane. Well, he's 8.
Yeah, he's 8.
That was nuts. It was so cool.
Well, he's the youngest in the family, and he has grown up with older siblings, and his godfather on the ranch side of things is same with fishing, same with on the ranch side. It's he's rolling with dudes that they're going to show you once. So he knows learn now or you just get left behind, so he's he's a quick learner. And we're still eating that halibut, by the way. And Coop on a Wednesday will be like, "Dad, can we have a halibut night?" And this is kind of cute. He doesn't like fish.
Really?
No, he does not like fish. And he is the fishiest fishing kid you will ever meet in your life. And he'll eat it. But I know him, and he's just this is so good. Usually at 12, you start getting into fish more, Yeah. He's still eating little kid food, give him he'll fish like a man, and you give him a Capri Sun, and he's psyched.
I remember that day I had to literally you guys met us at the harbor at 5:30, so you probably were up at 3:30.
Oh yeah.
I literally Cooper did not stop fishing the whole day. Yeah. At night, he was in I have the trash can. It's a whatever, extra tough trash can filled with hot water off the engine. He's in there in his board shorts with a fishing pole in his hand at 9:30 at night. Yeah. I'm like, Cooper, go to bed. Tomorrow's a new day.
He'll be 10 miles away from the coast and just be have like, okay, Dad, if we're freshwater today, I got my salt water, I got these jigs. He's like super. I have to go like, hey, bud. So for sure, 100,000,000%, we don't get to fish today. So we can't. That means we don't talk about fishing. You can go to the barn and like do whatever you want out there and like find a water trough and fish in it, whatever. I'm not taking you fishing today because he will not stop. It's like that little mouse in the cartoon. Are we going? Are we going? Are we going? Are we going? Is the wind good? Dad, is the wind good? Are there waves? Are you going to just surf or are we going to fish? Like surfing to him is like kind of like why? You know, he's like, but you know, like, so then this summer, I'm like, you know what? I need to get him surfing just so he can. Just like with all my kids, I'm like, you don't have to shred, but like you have to be able to, like, I want you to be able to get barreled because you're gonna be in places where you're gonna want to get barreled, right? Like for sure. I take him, and like I'm just laying on the back of this old like this skip fry thing I have, and he's like riding this wave. It's all crystal clear, and like I'm like, yeah, man, he's getting hooked. Like I'm getting him hooked, you know. Selfishly, because if he's into surfing, I get to surf more, like every dad does. And I'm like, after this session, he's gonna be hooked. So at least when we, you know, he'll be ready. And right as we're getting ready to kick out, Uncle Keith had smacked a super nice white sea bass in like 10 feet of water. And he's coming in, and Lucas and me and Cooper are about to kick out, and Uncle Keith's just holding this big giant white sea bass that's not even dead yet, right in Cooper's face. And I'm like, there went any chance that the surfing is going to be talked about at the end of the day.
Oh, surfing just
yeah.
Fish. So, classic.
So I think that when it comes to the point, like surfers get they get the chicks and stuff. So I think that maybe that'll be his draw.
Knowing Cooper, I feel like there's no way he won't end up being a surfer in some capacity.
Some capacity, yeah, for sure.
Because he likes to have fun. And someday I'll be all, whoa, that was fun.
Totally. 100%. Well, he loves his rodeo, and that's his big thing. But, I mean, he's 8. He's 8. So we'll see. You know what? In 10 years, who knows what that kid will be up to. What was epic about Cooper was I love the part when we get to the dock, maybe the second trip I think it was, and so great. And so we're at the dock, we got like so much fish. We're at the dock, we have so much fish, and like it was just the best day ever. And then we're like doing a quick cleanup, not like a full cleanup, and then Coop starts angling for the bigger, like, so now what do we got? We probably had like 15 fish on the boat.
Probably 13 or 14 or something.
Yeah. And Cooper starts angling for like the biggest fish. Like he's going to take the 2 biggest, like, you know, when we, at the end of the day, split up. And I loved it. Do you remember saying this? You're all, Grom, put that back. He's like, I think I caught these 2 ones. And you're like, no, we all caught fish together. Those are all our fish. And you handed him 2 fish that were killer halibut, but he wanted the big one. And then you said, y'all, you know what? When you get a boat and you get all the fishing gear, buy fuel and go out there, like you get to pick whatever fish you want to. And it was so great because I didn't say anything, and I was just like, perfect, keep going. And Coop just stood there like wide-eyed, and it soaked into his head so good. Like, and I never said anything, and that was the end of it.
That's funny. I wanted to talk one more thing about, maybe people don't really know about you, Chris. I mean, you, Keith, and Dan. That you told me that you pretty much managed you guys. I don't know. You ever talk about that? Does anyone know that?
That what?
Like you and your brother's managers.
Oh, yeah. Well, so when we were coming up, there were really like managers things. Like if somebody, I think Tommy Carroll had one for a little bit. Who else? Like, well, Kelly had some support and stuff, you know, but it wasn't really a thing. So it wasn't like, okay, we need to get our manager. Okay, we'll just do it. It was like, hey, we got to do this. We got to kind of navigate this stuff. And then there was a couple times where managers approached us and they were like, yeah, this is going to be cool. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And then we get like 15%. And I'm like, I don't understand what that dude gets in. And then those are the same dudes that try to put you in like Arby's or put, you know, like do something you don't want to do, you know? And so I just sort of like was lucky to have, like, whether it was like Bob Hurley or Paul Gomez or Brandon Willard or Yvon Chouinard, like, make a promise and, like, in one way or another stay true to it. And they just took a, like, gamble. And then I was able to, like, work with Keith and Dan, and, like, sometimes open, like, conversation where we were really focused on, like, how something was going to go. But a lot of the times, more of the times, it was like, hey, it's going to be pumping. I'm going to go see what's happening at Mavericks. And, like, Keith's like, well, fuck, I'm going to go to Hawaii. And Dan's like, I'm going to go to Todos. And it was like, unwittingly, we were just like everywhere at once, you know? So it was fun to help negotiate some of that stuff. There was never for us much negotiation. Like, there was such a momentum moving towards kind of where that cottage industry that surfing was. Like, it was, I don't think it knew where it was going, but it was going. There was a lot going on. And so it really was more personal relationships. And that made me as the one that was sort of figuring that stuff out, to, like, sit with a Chad Denena, you know, or a Dave Kennedy. Those guys were all, like, not only, like, you know, supported us enough to get to the next spot, they were kind of like mentors in a way. Like, not mentors. They weren't mentors. They saw they could see what was going to happen in surfing over the next 20 years, probably ish, you know, where we just saw the next day or the next swell, you know, and those guys were like, no, come here, you guys, you know, like early on, like in my early 20s, like having Dave Kennedy take me aside and be like, so you guys got a thing here that you could do that. And I'm like, I don't know, man. And he was definitely, like, good timing for him to sort of be like, no, if you keep doing what you're doing, there's good, you know, you're going to get to make some cool stuff and see some cool stuff. And so it wasn't a tumultuous, weird, antagonistic type relationships that we ever had during that. So, like, it wasn't, and the people that we were working with, like, they acted accordingly, because I didn't sick a dog on them. Like, I didn't bring in somebody that was solely focused on more, you know. And I think that they were like, cool, if we can just be people about it and not be assholes. Like, I really, you know, you're doing something that's great for what we're doing, and we want to be a part of it. That's how it always felt. Like, hey, we want to be a part of that. And for the most part, those people always just took such good care of us, and we maintain relationships, you know, to this day. So,
that's cool.
Yeah, it was managed. I would never say I'd manage my brothers. I just helped kind of connect a few dots, you know. They were out surfing better than I could. I'm like, good, shoot those guys. Like I'll go, you know, do some meeting, some place at, you know, in Costa Mesa or something. That was never. I'd seen hard work before. You know, I grew up with my dad, and I was like, this ain't hard work. You know, go sit and have a nice lunch with somebody that wants to help you. You know, yeah, I think that was real informative.
For sure. It seemed like back then, because even when I started writing for Hurley,
yeah,
I felt that,
yeah.
You know, we went down, and my dad brought Parker and I down. Like, Brian Orozco was the first person who set us up with Hurley. And
Brian Orozco, dude, we got to talk about that legend for a second after, though.
And so Brian brought us down, and, you know, we met Bob Hurley and Jeff and all those guys, and it was such a cool experience. And it felt like you're a part of the same, the goal was the same, you know?
Sure.
Even though they were on the business side of it, but they were creating this brand, they were creating something to support the thing that we all loved.
Right.
And it's interesting, somewhere along the way, it seems like it all changed in the surf world for the most part. I'd say, like,
we got the
now
tail.
it's like, okay, the people that had these visions, and we all were kind of like on the same, like, okay, well, how can we all, like, what's this thing around surfing? We all just loved surfing. Let's make this a living, you know? And obviously we're all making money, and we're all living off this thing that we love to do. Like, that's the dream, right?
Yeah.
And then you get the guys that come in and buy the brands and they squeeze them and they don't give a fuck that Chris Malloy wants to go make a surf film. They're like, yeah, cool. Well, we'll take that $100,000 and we'll like stick that with the investors or in the bank at the end of the year. And it's crazy to have just seen the way the industry's from all sides, you know, all the major brands now. It's like this thing that we all love and care about.
Totally.
It's not really like supporting that isn't really the goal. It's like the surfers want to make enough money to surf and live, and the companies want to make all the money to give back to the investors because they bought this company for a certain amount of money. So it's just a crazy shift, I feel like, to where before it was kind of like a like-minded mentality from the company and the surfers.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. And I think like
it'd be interesting to get your take on that. If it's
that's great. I think that's insightful. I think that the shift happened in my eyes when surfers, so before the guys that own the companies were just like, they saw that could work to get them. They're like, sell less drugs, sell t-shirts, more t-shirts. And that was a viable kind of shift in somebody's career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we were all in on it. Even when like in like 89, 90, early 90s, like we were all in on it. Like Bob Hurley's a surf junkie. Like all the guys that like supported us back in the day, like we were just part of their scam to do cool shit and surf, you know? So they understood we were drinking the same Kool-Aid in terms of like manage family, pay your bills and surf, maximum amount of surfing, traveling, going, making shit like that. And it was like, they understood because they're the same guys. And the shift happened when dudes were running shit that they weren't as towy to surf, to be in the ocean, to like really like forsake so much else. I'm like, this is my lot in life. I'm going to do that. So when we go in all freaking got the crazy eye about a project and we're like, dude, fuck, this shit's about to go down in the next 3 days. Like it is never going to happen again. And I need $50,000 right now. Just don't ask any questions. Like you could do that with Yvonne. Like most of the film work that I did for Patagonia, I started production on that before Patagonia knew. I would go in there and be like, we're making such a cool film this spring. And they're like, cool, what are your ideas? I'm like, well, I'll just show you because I'm almost done. And then they would be like, you know better. You can't just spring this on us. And then every time they would be like, oh, this is really cool. Okay, next time tell us you're gonna, because at Patagonia, it was climbers, surfers, you know. So it was like, you freaking good scam. They'd like wink at you, like, good job, like you got another day on your trip, or you got, you know, before you had to go help open up a store in Japan or New York or whatever. That was during that time. So now guys don't get that. I think when I sometimes in the surf world that have kind of come to it, they're like they're not crazy like we are. They're like, that doesn't really add up. And you're like, oh man, you're missing the whole thing. Like this whole thing's about taking chances, you know, and that's uncomfortable, understandably, for the business aspect that's involved in surfing now. And like, I wouldn't bet on me if I was them either. So whatever. Gonna get up early and make cool shit every day. That's all I always say. Like I've been blessed to work in all kinds of different stuff, you know, and I'm always like, never been to the point where I was like, I don't care about getting up early and checking the conditions, like wherever I am, and like go do cool shit today. You know, that's like kind of what it boils down to. And if there's like, and if a dude gets hired to come into this thing that is so nuanced, which is, you know, surfing and all the trappings that come along with it, you know, it'd be like, they're not going to take a chance. They're not going to, has got to add up. And we as athletes have to understand that too, because at the end of the day, like if the lights go off and we're off on some harebrained bullshit, like, then the party stops, right? Therein lies the scam.
Yeah.
Like, how are you gonna What's yours? How are you? It used to be more creative for sure on how guys would pull it off. And a lot of the stories will never be told, but yeah, I mean, it's everybody's got their own kind of like, it's fun for me to watch too, because it is a sort of a unique life path, you know, and I've always been watching the older surfers, everybody from, you know, Peter Cole and George Greeno and Bob like hung and watched, and like, and you go like, oh, all these guys, and they, you know, all have picked different ways of pulling it off and keeping going and manage, you know, family and life and everything. And that's been super informative for me to be like, that's kind of tragic in the end. We all know the guy that's like trying to make it for too long, and he knows it, we all know it, but he keeps doing that for another 5 years, and that girl finally is over it, and then he's like left at a, you know, just being like, shit. It's not that you can surf too much. You can't surf too much. It's just like how, when, and I tell you what, all you groms out there, teach your wife or your girlfriend how to surf. Because it's like, it goes from like, are we going to the beach today? To like, no, for sure we're going to check the waves. You know? Little tip of a married dude with kids. Get them all surfing. Get them all surfing.
On that note, would you have any advice for kids who are, you know, maybe coming up in today's day and age, who want to be a pro surfer or try to carve their own path through surfing and take that direction?
Yeah. Like, I think for the next generation coming up, like if you have a true north in terms of like, you know, it's not weird to question like why you're surfing, right? You know, and hopefully it's a few things, you know, but it's like if you stay true to like why you're surfing and why you're pushing yourself, that allows you to really focus and get better. And when you're doing really well, like people want to be a part of what you're doing, you know? And so I think focusing really more on just kind of what you're doing, like what you're doing, and because I think right now kids are just getting so scattered, right? You see like a kid do something and then the world was in love with them, and then like next week that kid's worked so hard, he did the thing, he got famous, and it's just like kind of over, and it's just never ending thing. So it's like that has to be, I imagine, for the, you know, the kids now, the generation right now is like overwhelming, you know. So it's like deep breath, like focus on your surfing and everything that goes along, what you want to do, where you want to go, you know, how, like what boards you're going to be riding, like focus on that, you know. And I also think that if I was going to say to the next generation, like you are on the road all year, your life is the road. It's trains, planes, automobiles, and tide and wind and everything. Like there's no excuse that you don't come out of 10 years of surf travel with like 18,000 pounds of books that you've read. Like it's such a amazing way to like, it's like a free education. You just take like 6 books wherever you go, if you can, you know what I mean? Like that is, cause your surfing life, like at the end of the day, it'll be yours, and you're going to get, you know, like it's a personal thing on what you really draw from it and how, you know, how that plays out over time. But, your surfing is better and you enjoy it more when you do have a full blown other stuff in your life. You know, like we all know guys, without naming names, that like, you know, all year sitting at one spot, you know, and just hanging, like kind of nothing else going on, which is amazing in its own way, those characters. But like you can surf all day and still have a total life, you know. You can, and it's easy to get caught up, I think, with social media and everything now, where it's just like you feel like, I imagine the kids just feel like they're in this tornado of like no certainty, you know, like and it's all in the ether. So simple. It was so much simpler for us guys, you know. Like I was this tactile. There's this tactile magazine that came out once a month. You lived all through that. You remember it, and it was like, cool, that happened. There it is. It's on the coffee table, and that is surf history now. That happened. You know what I mean? And like now it's like, there's like crazy stuff that's happening right now. And I'll be like, did you see the one? And like super informed people that are on it are like, no, what happened? Because there's all these like different galaxies of information out there, and like you can't, the surfing is splintered off, which I think is healthy, but it's to be a pro these days, like it's hard. It's got to be hard to satiate all the demands,
Yeah, I feel like you just said so much cool shit in the last 3 minutes. There was like 50 different things that I thought of talking about there. But I mean, a couple of big takeaways for me, and like, I agree. It is because I lived through that transition maybe even more like than you did as a pro surfer.
That's a good point. Yep.
And it's really hard with the social media. It's like you post some clip and it's like, oh, cool, everyone loves it. Yeah. Then there's 50 million other ones that day, and some guy got some crazy wave at Mullaghmore. And you're like, oh, that cutback I did at Rincon's stupid, And I feel like if you get caught up in that, like, oh, likes and followers and all this shit on there, it's like, yeah, I maybe in some weird way some of that stuff matters, but like if you go back to what you said and you just really go back to focusing on like your surfing. Yeah. What you believe in, what you're inspired by, and then like creating the person that you want to be, and then just trying to be more like you and walk through life more like you every day. I just feel like you're going to be interested in what you're going to be interested. You're going to do your thing surfing, whatever that is. But like people are going to want to be a part of that if you're a good person and you're doing rad shit. And like, I think that was kind of like something I took away from you guys, like probably more than anyone, was you guys were really fucking good surfers, but you like did it in your own way and you're always doing cool shit. And, maybe that was also like a bit of the ranch lifestyle and just like really embracing like where you're from and what your family was about and like all these ideals. And I was like, oh, I want to be like that, And it's like, well, what matters to me? And then you said that thing about reading books, it's like, I always had this I always wanted to be a surfer. Mm-hmm. That was what I wanted to do because I didn't want to really like go get a job. Yep. A real one. I do that because I went and worked for my dad a few times doing construction. I was like, fuck, all right, surfing's pretty sick. I got to do this for a while, which was great perspective. But like I always had this this thirst for like knowledge and being more than just a surfer, because I wanted to be able to roll into a room with like someone who didn't surf and not have them think I'm Spicoli in Fast Times, you know? Sure. Yeah. Like I wanted to be able to talk about shit, and like real life stuff and be interested in more than just surfing, and I don't know, maybe that's like a bit of a weird insecurity because I felt like growing up, we were pigeonholed like as, oh, your kids surf, like right on, like fucking smoking weed and throwing shakas, like, but little did they know we were like having this insane life experience, like saving some dough and like meeting these fucking amazing people, like learning about business and marketing and the world and culture, like all this shit through surfing, Totally. Like I can't think of one other thing in this life that I probably could have done that would have given me this life. And I just think that's so cool about surfing, Absolutely. It scares me when I think about like, if I didn't like somehow land into like getting to do this, like, cause, think about it for a second. I mean, like it's a lot of things that I wish I had done and like, oh, I could have done that, could have done that. But like, I don't know, it just seems like it fits. And all the cool stuff, like because of surfing and your upbringing with your dad and your brothers, like then you went on to do all this other amazing things that sort of stem just for this love of surfing, like you may never have gotten into making films and this whole career that blossomed out of your love for surfing.
Totally. No, it is, it definitely, like going back to what I would say to the kids is like, if you are, blessed enough to have the ability to get paid to surf, it's just like the people you're going to meet, like you might not even sit there and like, talk for a day with the person, but you meet them and then they have something that's amazing. And you're like, hey, you know what? In 10 years I could call that person. And I've done that so many times and be like, hey, I'm going to be in this zone and try to be reciprocal. And like, there's so much at the end of a pro surfing career. There's so much there. And I got to see firsthand a lot of dudes who had got a few dudes that had world titles that were super miserable dudes, So that where like you're having breakfast with these dudes, you know what I mean? You can tell what they did last night. You can tell their whole thing. And like that was definitely, and they seemed, and their presence seemed like they had been robbed of something, even though they were two guys in particular. And that was a cautionary tale of like getting to see all that like up close. Got a kid thinking.
I thought about that a lot.
Like, and that's one of those reasons I never like to completely solve the mystery on a spot or a region or a place or something. Even like that, even with like songs and music and writing and stuff, like I like that little bit of like never figuring it out, and that gives you something to ponder when you're out doing your stuff,
Yeah. Don Henley, the Eagles documentary, he says that. He's like, there's all this shit people think Hotel California is about this and about that. Yeah. And they'd always ask us. And he's like, dude, it's supposed to be like that. I'm not supposed to tell you what it's about. It's supposed to be there to evoke something out of you and have this mystery about it. I thought that was really cool.
And like, dare I put Curran in with Bob Dylan, but like those guys have a similarity in that like whenever they've been sat down for the big interview, they just like let all the air out of the room like for a second, like, and they just drop bombs, like just the best shit you've ever heard that totally in its own artful way is like, I don't really give a fuck about you and I don't want to talk about this. But then they spin these amazing quotes. Like what was in like searching for Sonny's film, Searching for Tom Curran. What's that? I should know it by heart, but at the end of the movie, they're like, so how do you do this? And he's like, I just like riding a bike or juggling or something. I don't know. Like it's the end of the movie. It's like my favorite.
So rad. I don't even know if I've ever quite picked up on that nuance, and I've watched that so many times.
Well, he's basically, and like Sonny has to ask that question, but he's basically being like, shut the fuck up. Like there's no.
I just do it.
Yeah, and we're not, Yeah. I want to say again that like, that reminds me of Sonny Miller, who was one of my biggest mentors and was truly one of the best surf cinematographers ever. And he always had a fun banter with Curran. Like those guys knew each other. Like they was like grumpy old men almost in a way. Mm-hmm. Tom always just kind of stoic and then just dropping these like $10 million dry wit, little snarky retorts, just like maybe one a day, and like so genius, so good.
Yeah, legends. Yeah. Well, what are you up to these days, Chris? I kind of know, but for the rest of the people that sat here and listened to us talk shop for a while,
so I'm getting to do a bunch of fun stuff right now. I mean, the vast majority of my days are up in Los Alamos, where we live, on our little ranch up there, and that's always the romanticism of the ranch is like more like fixing PVC and like something with fleas or something, there's definitely not a bunch of cowboying going on. It's more gardener work, which I really love, and then there's a couple films that I'm like kind of excited. That's how they always start, with an idea, and then you talk to somebody that you know well, and you're like, what do you think? And they're like, fuck, that one will go. Let's go. Let's do it. And then, okay, how are we going to do this? I've got a couple of ones, and they're not surf films, but they're surf adjacent. I notice people using that word a lot. And then I am, Kelly and Todd Glazer are doing a book with Rizzoli, and it's like 15 years of Todd's footage. And he traveled, people don't realize, like he traveled with Kelly this whole time. They're like brothers. It's such a cool thing. And they, Kelly and Todd came to me, and they basically were like, hey, we'd just love to have you in the edit. And so I'm helping. I've been down to hung with Todd and Kelly, and we've gone through photos a million times. And Todd doesn't realize like every photo is good. Like even his like second, third pick are like still so good. And I'm like, he's like, I don't know about that photo. I'm like, it made it all the way to layout. Like, it's good photo, you know? And he's just Todd is just such a dedicated, frothy person and smart. And I feel like there's kind of only one person, and that's Todd, that could handle Kelly for 15 years on the road. Like, and we all know Kelly, like best guy in the world, brother to me, for sure. But like when there's surf, or there could be surf, like you got to hand it to the dude. Like, he is the frothiest kid in the world. So like Todd had to, like, when Kelly travels, it's pretty crazy how he does, right? Like, it's always last minute, and he takes off in the air and he's like, fuck, I'm going to Barbados, but I know this spot's going to be good. Maybe I can book a flight. I mean, and it's all in the name of surf. It isn't for photo shoots. Like, that's the thing, is like, if it weren't for Todd, a ton of this shit these sessions would never even be seen. You know, I mean, there's the one in, I'll save it. You guys check it out. It's like, it's going to be neat. There's a bunch of good stuff. And so I've been able to run down and hang with those guys and edit. Yeah. So
I've known Todd since I was 12.
Oh, no way.
He went to Brooks in Santa Barbara, and he used to pick me and Parker up and take us surfing down at like Shores or something. We'd go pull into closeouts, and he'd shoot flash or photos of us. And when he was going to Brooks, and then he'd take us to In-N-Out, and he'd just trip out that we'd eat like 8 In-N-Out burgers each and milkshakes and shit.
That is so cool. I had no idea.
Yeah. And then when I started doing the tour, they were traveling together.
Yeah.
And I was like, Todd, you're like, what are you doing here? He's like, I'm with Kelly. Where's Kelly?
Yeah.
Dude, he's like, there and there. And I'm like, well, we're at J-Bay, like the waves are firing. So he'd just be shooting photos because he was frothing. He'd be like, I don't know if Kelly's going to show up or not, but he'd be all the way at J-Bay waiting for Kelly to show up.
He's just a great guy. And it comes down to all those things we're talking about. Like, he knows what he wants to do, you know, and he isn't singular in his vision of life either, you know, but he knows what he's going to do. And he just has that internal furnace that runs hot in a good way, you know? I mean, like, yesterday sent me a picture of this like ridiculous like mountain down in North County or something, and like he's been mountain biking this thing, and like just this, he'll get up and do that. Like, he'll be like, I know I can't get up that. I've been trying for a month. I'm gonna get up and do that, you know, and then start his day. He's just frothy.
Yeah, I want to get Todd on here someday.
You should. Me and him, when we have to curb ourselves, because when we get around all the photos and there's caffeine involved, like we'll go like an hour and a half and be like, we didn't look at one photo. and it's a lot of it's my fault, because, you know, it's just too fun. All the images spark. There's so many neat characters that Kelly has grown up around, you know, and like some of them are included. So I see when we're editing, I'm like, that takes me into that world and that time, and it's hard to stay focused because there's so much good stuff.
For sure. Well, I'm fired up to check out the book. Well, I don't know. I mean, we could sit here and talk all day with me and Chris. So I don't know. Is there anything else that you like really wanted? I feel like we covered a lot of cool stuff.
So this is just fun and random. I've told it before. I remember you and your brother, because I was running around with your uncle, Jason Baffa, and we were down in Mexico, and he was shooting 16, and they just had such a great time. And he was telling me about you guys, and I'm like, all right, we'll see. You know, like, that's my job, is to be like, all right, whatever, we'll see. And then I did that movie One Track Mind, which I still feel terrible about, and I had like Kalohe, a bunch of those kids. So I wanted a trip with just like basically your guys' age, but we had never surfed together yet. I was just hearing all this stuff. And like, there was some obvious ones, and then like at the last minute, everybody, like Evan, like everybody was like, wait, how's Conor not coming? I'm like, I don't know. And all I would have ever had to do is see you surf. I don't know. I didn't know. So, and I regret that. I apologize here on camera that I didn't. And then I hear more about you guys, and I think it was like on like a Thanksgiving day. So it was a Thanksgiving day, and we were cooking I was living on the San Julian Ranch at that time, and my good buddy Jim Brady goes, we're going surfing. And I'm like, dude, I can't today. So we go down, and he had a mat, and I had like a 10-0, like single fin longboard, and it's just pumping as good as it gets, like 200, 300 yard long, just as big and good as it gets. It was just he and I, and then like I just see like these little like figures up top, and then I'm like, oh wow, that guy got it like right on the perfect spot. Like that guy surfs here, whatever. And you just did like 8 of the biggest man hacks. Like you were a lot smaller than you are now. It's just full blown man hacks all the way, and like kicked out by me with a big smile. And I was like, okay, I'm in. This kid's fucking awesome. And we surfed. Our family surfed together that day, and that was it.
Jason was with us that day.
He was. He was looking kind of pensive.
Yeah. Oh fuck, it's kind of big out here.
I think he was like he's taking it all in. He got some screamers. He got some good ones. Will never forget that session. That was friggin' pretty all time.
Probably partially because you were out there, and I remember that exact moment of like, I was like, oh, that's Chris Malloy. And like I kind of knew you at that point, but not like we do now, where we talk shit for hours, you know. But
sure.
There was one other time I remember we were like we were Groms, and I mean I was really young at this point, and someone had like brought us, like I used to do this after school surf thing, and there's probably like 6 of us kids, and we went down to where you guys lived, and we were out and we were surfing, and you kind of paddled by and were kind of grumbled at us a little bit because we were just being like little freaking, you know, just frothing Groms. And it was like, you know, probably this big. There weren't that many people, but it was just grinding on the sand, and we were probably being annoying. And I'm chirping. Kind of like said something to us, and we're like, oh fuck.
I'm doing my duty.
Like that's funny because to me as a kid growing up, like I was never like, oh, Chris Malloy's a dick. I was like, yeah, well he should have told us to stop being annoying.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. It's just like it's kind of like, think of it this way. Think of like if you're new to surfing, and you know, you're trying to figure out that whole like thing, and like, you know, it's got to be an exciting time in anybody's life, right? And like and then to have like these people, you know, that are like, whoa, there's certainly a vibe there, and like not know, you know, that's got to be hard. You know, you feel for people because it's confusing. And my advice would just be like, again, you know, shut the fuck up and get out of the way and listen. And within no time, you are going to be so proud of yourself that you garnered respect from the people in your local lineup. Then go out with the mentality of like, the ocean's everybody's.
Mm-hmm.
The ocean's, I read it on a website. It's everybody's.
Well, that was cool though, because you said that little, like, and it wasn't some big thing. Like it was just kind of like, you know, hey guys, like, you know, and like I learned that from you in a nice way, compared to some of the other experiences I had in my life. Like one other when I was a kid, and I, you know, the age old thing of like, oh, there's someone in the tube and you're paddling this way, and you got to paddle to the whitewash. I was like 8, and I didn't know, and I'm paddling this way. I'm like, oh my god, this guy's in the barrel. Ditched my board, ran it over. Came up, we're like tangled up, 3 huge fin marks through my like one shortboard, you know, at that point. Amazing. And I'm like, and the guy wasn't like, are you all right? He's like, what the fuck are you doing, Grom? And I was like, oh, I don't know. And he's like, he's screaming at me, you never paddle that way. You always paddle the whitewater. And I was like, sweet.
Simple
Went
things.
in, board's like ruined. And I'm like, I'm never going to paddle that way again.
Done deal.
You know?
Done deal.
And it's safer because you paddle to the whitewater.
Done deal.
You could have said it a little nicer, but I got the point.
Right. I feel like people should think of it as like your dad. If you get a comeuppance in the lineup, think of it as like your dad or your best friend when you do something that's clearly not right, whether you knew it or you didn't, and they're like, hey, they check you super hard. And if it's your brother or your best friend, you're like, that sucks, that hurt, that sucks, but okay. Like I'm gonna take that advice and deal with the uncomfortableness around it, and like words aren't gonna fix anything. Like I'm gonna prove. How about I just act accordingly in the lineup and watch what happens, like kind of instantly, how people you know, they play off that. Like weird intruder, kind of sketchy, no eye contact, like catfishing super hard when like the girls go, shit like that, you know? Like you're gonna, it's reciprocal, dude. Like just
totally.
Don't be an asshole.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I think we talked about a lot, Chris.
Yeah, I think so too.
Well, thanks for coming down.
Well, shit, I'm thoroughly stoked. I made the mission down here, and I felt like it was like pretty much all, like fishing all summer with you, like all the conversations we had, like waiting for fish to move around. Like that's what this was pretty much. So I hope that works, and I'm just super stoked to be down here.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, thanks for sharing all your knowledge and stories and all the good stuff that all us kids need to hear.
We're just getting going, huh?
Pass it on.
It's on.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, fellas.